Alright, welcome everyone. You are here with Tsidiso and Edward from the Justice Desk, and today we will be talking about microaggressions within relationships, and specifically what a microaggression is and how one actually responds to it, the subtle undertones, going deeper into it. Edward, well, thank you for joining us here today and us talking about microaggressions. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. As Tsidiso said, my name is Ed. I come from an organization called Justice Africa. We're a human rights non-profit organization. We work within the areas of gender-based violence, human rights, and children's rights. And our main goal is to help people understand and defend their human rights, certainly, and allowing everyday people to feel empowered to make a change in themselves and those around them. So, yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Certainly. Thank you for joining us. Now, with microaggressions, let's first actually delve into microaggressions and what a microaggression is, without me being too much nerdy, if I may say, or giving the direct actual definition from a dictionary. A microaggression, what it is a statement or maybe an action of discrimination that is made against a group of people. And there is a very subtle undertones to them, and sometimes can be extremely deliberate. So people, when it comes to microaggressions, they can be conscious to the fact that they are the microaggressor, so very much intentional, and in other cases very much unintentional and oblivious to the fact that what they have done or said is actually a microaggression, and the statement or action is that of a discriminatory nature towards a person or specific group based on their race, gender, or social economic status, even sexual orientation for some cases. That is exactly what microaggression would be. But of course, it does come with some of its causes and caused by something. You being part of the Justice Desk, what would you say actually are some of the causes of microaggressions?
Yeah, so I think with an issue like microaggressions, I don't think there's necessarily one cause, but I think the one that we work with at the Justice Desk, and one of the, I guess, major ones are lack of awareness.
Definitely.
We don't raise our boys or girls at that matter to really be aware of themselves, their emotions, how they show up in spaces, and also how they impact others, right? A lot of times boys will just be sort of single focused. I'm doing my thing, I'm the man, I'm doing this, with a lack of awareness about how my actions might impact others, whether they are big actions, small actions, words or actions. Like you said, microaggressions can take many forms, and I think a major issue is the sort of lack of awareness. And
Definitely.
what we try and do at Insika December, which is one of our projects that works with young boys with the goal of ending toxic masculinity and helping our boys become pillars of hope and leaders of change in their society. And one of the major things we work with is awareness, right? Because you cannot change, you cannot learn if you're not aware about who you are, the problems you might be facing, and where you can go wrong and where you can go right, right?
Exactly.
So that's a major thing. And then I think the next one is our old friend, toxic masculinity, which I guess very simply is defined as those ideas, those behaviors, those actions that harm the man himself and those around him, right? So I think there are many causes, and we don't have the time to chat about them.
And we're going to go the entire day about it.
Yeah, but for me, the major two ones would be lack of awareness and this sort of set of principles known as toxic masculinity that men often feel they need to
portray.
Yeah. And I'm really interested, like, what are your thoughts on those two issues, especially toxic masculinity as a man? What are your thoughts on it, and what are sort of, I guess for you, what are the sort of major ways in which toxic masculinity shows up for you, especially in like relationships?
Well, there are many ways, and when we define also the subtle undertones when it comes to microaggressions, we can identify 3 different types of microaggressions, which is the micro insult, which is more subtle, where the individual themselves, they're not actually aware that they are the microaggressor. In some cases, they might possibly know, but this insult itself is quite subtle, whereas you'd find a micro assault is much more something deliberate, where the person who's the microaggressor actually knows that this that they are doing, the action or the statement being made of a prejudiced nature or a racial nature, is something that is going to be harmful. And when it comes to micro assault, it's much more similar to your old-fashioned racism. And we also then get micro invalidation. And some of the examples like these will come up in relationships. For instance, we have in young relationships these days, indoor must. And that's where a man must either have money, be someone who has a job, staying by himself, and the list just runs on and on and on. Now, that kind of microaggression itself would be a micro-invalidation. And the individual then also feels the dangers that come with that is the individual will find themselves having trouble being able to be social and find themselves in a position of social anxiety, being able to approach someone of the opposite sex, because finds that, okay, because I don't have A, B, and C of this indoor must have, I then myself not able to really approach this girl because she will find I'm not someone who is worthy of her time, her attention, or affection. Could also lead to things such as depression, because the young gentleman then has himself defined by these materialistic things that he's said to must have.
Yeah.
And without them, his self-worth then diminishes.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with it.
Toxic masculinity, right? This box that men have to sort of fulfill, and if you don't fulfill it, that sort of feeling of, like you said, anxiety and depression, and feeling of worth it.
Yeah. Exactly. When it comes to toxic masculinity, you and I both, as we've spoken before, we are capable of addressing a number of toxic masculinity traits and how they actually connect within relationships. One of the toxic masculinity traits that we do get is that of an individual who is stoic, a man being stoic, which would be men being taught to be independent, self-reliant, and being strong. Whereas the one who is seen as vulnerable is ridiculed. So he's seen as weak. And the result and the dangers of that is he's not open about his emotions and how he feels. So in a relationship, it becomes a very toxic environment to be in, because he himself doesn't allow himself to be actually open with his partner and actually communicate. And we also then get that of being promiscuous. This one has a massive double standard, because men genuinely will praise another man for his sexual conquests. Give you a primary example. A man who is seen to have more sexual partners in the past, or what they have dubbed as a body count today, he gets praised by a male counterpart for that. Female, on the other hand, who has a higher body count or more sexual partners in the past, she then is given the definition of being a loose woman, or even a much more worse term. And that is the double standard that actually exists in that particular scenario and in a relationship itself. There can be much more different toxic masculinity traits as well that actually do exist, and how they connect to these microaggressions within relationships and the environment that they can cause. In your own opinion also, how do we also identify some of these microaggressions within relationships and some of these toxic masculinity traits? I mean, possibly that of a scenario of a remote in the household, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, 100%. Like, we see a lot of these examples of microaggressions, and you spoke a lot about how they can impact men, which I think is not spoken about a lot, right?
Definitely.
And obviously, we know that microaggressions can denigrate the value and the dignity of women as well. Certainly, we often hear sort of words and comments about the way women look, right? The type of figure they should have, the type of hair they should have, the type of skin tone they should have, how they should conduct themselves outside, and you're not feminine enough, or you're too feminine, you're not this, you're not that. All of these things might seem small and innocuous. They denigrate someone, and they can really, push someone off the path. And as you said, induce depression and anxiety, and it just makes someone, especially in a relationship, feel worthless. Because how it's supposed to love someone if they just disparage you at every single turn, right? And you spoke about the infamous remote in the household, right? If it's at 7 p.m. on a Saturday and there's a big football game, and your partner maybe doesn't want to watch that.
Oh, that we've all seen in the
Exactly. And men often just assume, I get
to watch soccer matches happening, basketball, football, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and that is a prime example of a microaggression, and the way in which the ownership over spaces can really result in negative consequences for the couple at large. And I guess all of this is quite interesting, really profound. And I guess the question that therefore arises is sort of, what can be done? What can we do as everyday people in order to erase this idea of microaggression and really stop us being perpetrators and others feeling, the victims of microaggression. And I think the first thing that we can really do is to examine our own behaviors and
certainly
thoughts and ways of being, right? That's the first step. Do your research, there's Google is everywhere. You can find out, Google microaggressions, conversations like this, watch these so that you can reflect on your own behaviors about times that you've been, maybe a perpetrator or a victim. And it's not necessarily to make you feel bad or terrible, but it's about that reflection.
And also be someone who can understand exactly that what a microaggression really is, because we are talking about microaggressions within relationship. However, this conversation of microaggression itself, its term itself, it's so expanded. It happens in a place of work. It happens within relationships. It happens every single day of life. So having these conversations and actually making sure we understand what microaggressions are, how they happen when it comes to gender, disability, social economic status, sexual orientation, race, ethnic groups. We need to have the conversation more and understand exactly what these different kinds of microaggressions are, the examples of them as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess once you've done all that soft work, you've had all the conversations, reach out to organizations like Justice Desk Africa, like ways in which you can assist and support projects like the Tsidiso project that works to stop and break down toxic masculinity and allow boys to become aware that we don't become perpetrators of microaggression. So we're always in need of volunteers. If you're keen, reach out, check us out on social media, on our website, and definitely assist and support the work that we do.
And on your social media and website, where can people find the Justice Desk exactly? On Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, where exactly? At the Justice Desk or?
Yeah. At the Justice Desk, all of the above, all social media platforms, our website, justicedesk.org. Follow us, check out the work that we do. It's really, really amazing, if I must say so myself. So please help and support.
If you want to get in touch with the Justice Desk to be able to be either a volunteer or maybe if you are someone who's needing help in those departments he mentioned, you can certainly reach out to them. My name is Tsidiso in association with the Fix ZA. That's where you'll find them across all social media platforms. We will continue the conversation around gender-based violence, specifically also microaggressions, and have a much more holistic conversation regarding microaggressions, what they are, and the impacts that they do have on us and society.